Very excited to introduce you to Christiane King. She is a designer. She's founder of Blanco, designer, artist, design strategist, digital strategist, working out of Hobart, and very excited to have her come up. So please welcome her to the stage.
Thank you, Matt. Hello guys, how's it going? My name's Christiane and I'm from Blanco, which is a design studio, creative studio in Hobart. And basically there I do a lot of branding, design, graphic design, I do art, illustration, make PlayStation games, work on websites, and a whole bunch of different stuff. Basically, in Tasmania, you get what you can get, and I've just broadened my experiences, and I've been able to work with some really interesting people on meaningful projects, so I've really been blessed in that. I'm super excited to be here today. Almost didn't make it here. My car broke down in Burnie. I drove down from Hobart to Burnie to my old family home, and just as I pulled into the driveway, my engine light came on and my car lost its power, and I thought, I don't even know if I'm going to make it to Launceston, but I'm here. And yeah, I'm so excited when Matt asked me to speak today. I've been watching what Foundry's been doing from a distance, and that's the first slide. Watching what Foundry's been doing from a distance, and I was really excited about their approach, and it was very different to the usual academic university type approach, which is all about theory. And I was excited to see how they were getting industry people in and marrying industry and giving people practical, hands-on experience in design, because I believe that that's where learning really happens, when you apply yourself and you actually jump in and start doing things. So, my talk's about create your future, and it's loosely based around purpose. And I believe that us individually and collectively are the creators of our future. And more than ever in society, we're having to be proactive in designing our future, and we need to envisage what future we're excited about, our future version of heaven, rather than leaving it up to, defaults and potentially going into our future version of hell. We want the heaven version, right? We want to get excited about the future, yes? So, before I jump into the future, I'm going to wind back the clock and talk about the past. So, I'm going to go back to the 1900s, where an illustrator was asked to draw up some postcards of what they think that the world would be like in the year 2000. So they were asked to imagine what the world might be like in the next 100 years. So let's take a look. Here's the first postcard. I'm going to show you three. So in the year 2000, they thought, there'll be steam trains over there, but they'll be able to take cities they'll be able to drive cities with their steam trains. And I wouldn't have to worry about my car breaking down, because the whole of Hobart would be able to drive right up to Launceston. Oh, and steam trains are big. Steam trains are awesome, and trains are awesome, and boats are awesome. So why don't we just combine them all together and drive that boat right up onto land? That would be awesome in the future. And this is my favourite one. Why don't we go for a stroll around the lake with the aid of balloons? Even the horse has a balloon. That's what we'd want to do in the future, right? So I'm fascinated by these postcards, and I find them super interesting because we look to the future with the frame of mind that we have today. We always look with the lens of our mindset and our circumstances today, and it makes it very difficult to be able to predict the future. And another example of this is the horse manure crisis at the same time in the year 1900 in New York. They had about 3 million people in New York at the time and needed 100,000 horses to carry the people around the city. And those 100,000 horses produced 1 million kilos of horse shit. And this was a really big problem because the streets were stinky, it carried diseases, The horse crap dried out and then turned into dust and blew into people's faces, and it was a real problem. But the bigger problem was that the population was ever increasing. And they couldn't work out, if the population is increasing, then, and the horses will need to increase to carry all the people around, this horse manure problem is going to get out of control. It's already pretty much out of control. And so they had the first International Urban Planning Conference in 1898, and after 3 days of deliberation, the delegates left the conference because they couldn't find a solution to the horse shit problem. But they didn't have the foresight that Henry Ford and his team would, that's all the horses, would develop motor transport. And over the years, the motor transport, because it was affordable, would replace the horses. And by 1912, the problem was resolved. Now, this isn't to say that our problems of today are just going to be resolved through innovation. It takes individuals, it takes proactive creativity and purposeful creativity, as well as the hard work of teams to create these innovations. So it's really exciting that you guys are developing these creative skills for the future. It is a really exciting place to be in. Now, thank you, Foundry, for asking me to talk about purpose. What a way to throw someone into an existential crisis, literally. An existential crisis is the moment in which an individual questions if their life has purpose. But fortunately, I've had many existential crises in my life, and although these times are difficult when you question your purpose, I believe they're the most transformational of times. And basically my talk is about all of my different existential crises along the way. And I like to think of purpose as a process. You get to a certain point and things might fall apart, and these times, even though they're the most difficult of times, are the times where you can reflect and you can do that difficult thinking and you can change directions. So I'm going to talk about my journey, pull back the curtain of Blanco, and how I've become a designer. And Steve Jobs' quote here really brought it home to me when I heard it. It really created some trust in me, to trust the process. So he said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. You have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. And that led me on a path. When he said this in his 2005 commencement speech at Stanford, it just gave me a sense of trust that I should follow my intuition and curiosity and just jump into things and gain those skills, and in the future I'll be able to put those skills to value. So going right back in time to my childhood. So this is me and my brother and our little pet lamb Mary, and I was really fortunate to grow up on a farm. I really loved the experience of being in nature, and it still holds a very sacred place for me. Going back to my family home over the last few days has really nourished and grounded me, and I was really blessed to have this childhood, even though we had to carry bricks and chop wood and all of that kind of stuff. Dad said that's character building, and it's made me who I am today. And as a kid, I just loved anything creative. So drawing, painting, creating stories, illustrating stories, creating my own books. I just loved creating, and as much as I loved creating, I loved people's reactions to what I was creating. I loved giving people insight into my imagination and seeing their reactions. And sometimes they were good, sometimes they were not so good. Sometimes I didn't understand what I was writing because I was 7 years old and I couldn't spell. And I had two older sisters, and one time I decided to write a book for them. And I wrote a book about 3 horses, and I wrote it and I illustrated it and I put all this effort into it, and I was so excited to give it to them. And they started reading it, and it was called Black Butty, B-U-T-T-Y, because I couldn't spell beauty at the time. And Black Butty and her two friends were frolicking around the mountains and the valleys, and it was this beautiful, magical story. And Black Butty's two best friends were Clitty and Lickety Split. And they were rolling around on the ground laughing, and I was like, why are they laughing at my beautiful story? And I was so confused. They were literally crying, laughing. So reactions were sometimes good, sometimes not so good. But I never lost that love of creating and that love of communicating. And I was also obsessed with the brain because I just loved observing people and seeing the way they thought. And so it got to the point where I went into high school and everyone was asking, what do you want to be when you grow up? And everyone was doing work experience, and I really thought, I don't know what I want to be. And then I saw on TV, I was watching Australian Story with Dad in the lounge room, and I saw Dr. Charlie Teo on TV. And he was a neurosurgeon, and he was saving people's lives, and he loved brains, and he also rode a motorbike. And I thought, he's just like me. And so I went to the school library, and I asked Jeeves for Charlie's email address. We didn't have Google back then. And I emailed him and I said, I'm really interested in maybe being a brain surgeon. Your story really inspired me. Do you have any tips? And I never forget sitting there in the library, and he wrote back, and I got this email in my inbox from Dr. Charlie Teo, and I was like, whoa. And he said, to really understand what neurosurgery is all about, you should come up to Sydney and do work experience with me. And I was like, okay. So Mum said she'd come up with me, and while the other kids were sweeping at the hairdressers, I was standing side by side with Dr. Charlie Teo performing brain surgery, and it was one of the best weeks of my life. It was so interesting. I loved it. And more than just the success of being a neurosurgeon, the thing I loved the most was Charlie's character and the way he interacted with his patients and how humble he was. And even the fact that he asked for a 15-year-old girl to come and do brain surgery. He's an incredible person, and that has always stayed with me. And so at the end of that week, I was deliberating what I wanted to do with my life, and I said to Charlie, I'm tossing up between doing brain surgery or something creative because I just love being creative. I love art. I love communicating. And he broke it down to me, and he said, to do brain surgery, it takes 13 years of specialisation after university. You have to be dedicated. You have to be obsessed with medicine in order to do this. And that set me into my first existential crisis. And I deliberated, do I really love medicine or do I want to go down the creative field? And the creative field was just so much more interesting to me. It was open, it was unknown. And I thought, if I gain the skills, I might be able to help change people's behaviour to make them more healthy. And I decided to study marketing and psychology. And I got my first job in advertising. And it was an incredible experience. And I'm really happy that I chose to work in a really small advertising agency. It was just me and my boss. And because he was running lean, he let me do the designs so he didn't have to pay a graphic designer. And it was just fantastic to be able to have that hands-on experience. And I still remember going to clients with my designs and the client saying, we don't like any of them. And I was like, me neither. But it was just great to get that hands-on experience. I learnt how to use Photoshop, InDesign. I studied marketing and psychology, but I taught myself design in this time, and it was a really great experience. But after about a year and a half, I started to feel like it wasn't purposeful and my soul was being crushed. And I really started to contemplate again, another existential crisis. Was this really purposeful for me? And at that time, I got a quote from Einstein and I pasted it above my desk. And he was talking about purpose. And he said, how strange is it for us to be here on earth? For what purpose we don't know, but sometimes we feel we can sense it. And he basically explained that our purpose without deeper understanding is that we are here for other people. For all of those people the people we know that give us love and bring a smile to our face, and all of those strangers as well that we are touched by, the living and the dead that create our reality today, and their gifts that we receive today and we continue to receive. And we must give back to that. And that brought a real sense of gratitude. And I thought, I am so grateful for my life, and I want to give back in a different way than, expanding one person's market share relative to another. So I quit that job and then decided to become a yoga teacher. So that was another existential crisis. So yeah, I went and flew to LA and decided to do 9 weeks teacher training, Bikram yoga teacher training, and it was an incredible experience. We had 500 yogis in a ballroom that was heated to 30 degrees, and twice a day we did a 90-minute yoga class, and it was an incredible experience. And I loved yoga. I loved how it made me feel. I loved the mental benefits, the physical benefits, and I thought maybe this is my gift that I can give back to the world. Maybe this is my purpose. But unfortunately, when I came back to teach, the studio that I was working at was a little bit toxic, and I won't go into details, but it didn't allow me to express that enthusiasm and that love of yoga that I wanted to. So I left that and jumped in to helping create an online course with my 2 sisters at the University of Tasmania. And this was an incredible experience. I loved working with my sisters. It was an opportunity of a lifetime. We had this tiny little team of just my sisters and a few really beautiful, amazing geeks that were so intelligent. And we'd all get together and brainstorm, and we created this thing. So the Understanding Dementia MOOC is a massive open online course, and we built it up to have one of the highest retention rates of online courses in the world, as well as touching over 50,000 students. And it was super exciting, it was super successful, and the most purposeful thing were the little stories like Mr. Berry in Namibia, who was taking the MOOC around on his phone and going to these tribes who, with people with dementia in Namibia, they thought they were possessed by a witch. And so they put them in a little hut without any food and chained them up because they thought they were evil. And he was going around and teaching these tribes about dementia and teaching them that these people aren't possessed. It's just a natural thing, and this is how you deal with them. And he was reintegrating these people back into their tribes. So that made me feel like, yes, this is my purpose. This is really purposeful. This is really meaningful. But when it got successful, we got booted out of that project and the project was stripped off us. So that didn't last for very long, unfortunately. Whoop. So then I started pouring my heart into art, and I'd always loved art. I'd always loved painting. And I decided, maybe my purpose is to bring joy to people through my art. And so I started going ham, doing these paintings, and I was loving it. And people said, you can't create a business as an artist. Everyone had told me that, and I'm like, I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to create a business out of this. So I built up my following on Instagram to 13,000 people. I had an online store. I was selling my artworks all around the world, and I loved it. But when it got to that stage and people were saying, can you paint me a deer, or can you paint me a beach babe? And also, the plastic nature of acrylics and the solvents used in oil paints, I had just had this nagging feeling that at this stage it wasn't for me. And so I quit that too. And the single thread that kept me going through this whole time was my work doing design. And when I finished at the advertising agency way back a few years ago, I started doing odd jobs on the side. So logos for friends, and then I started promoting myself a little bit more, and it just, over time, gradually it started building up. And so when I stopped with the university, I got my own studio and I started my own full-time design business because I'd built it up over time. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity that having this business has given me and the flexibility to do all of these different side hustles and work on all these different projects. And this was a bit of a mantra that I had when I was doing my design, is that I always wanted to over-excel. I always wanted to go that extra mile with my design, because even if it's taking me a little bit longer, I am developing my skills. I'm bringing it to that next level. And although people might not pay me for all of my time, when I get an opportunity, I want to make the most of it. So an example of this is my work with Pancho Villa. So Pancho Villa came to me and they said, we're doing a Mexican restaurant, Gothic tequila bar fusion, and we want to create a really exciting experience. And so I thought, okay, this is a really cool opportunity. I want to make the most of it. I want to go that extra mile, and I want to, deliver an amazing experience for their clients. And so I said, okay, we need a really cool artwork to go on the front cover of the menu. And so I said, I'll do this skull picture, and I sold it to them. And they didn't pay me to spend hours on Photoshop cutting out little butterflies and bugs for hours. And I didn't even really know how to use Photoshop that well. So there was like a billion layers and groups. I was trying to work it out, but I hacked it together. And so that was the front cover of the menu. And there's the logo as well. And then they wanted a creative cocktail menu. And I thought, rather than just listing the cocktails, let's do pictures of them and then write down their ingredients in a really creative way so people are like, ooh, I want to try that. It's got all those ingredients, and it was really exciting. So it has that business benefit as well. And another thing they asked me to do was a stained glass window. And so they said, we can just do like a vinyl print and just make sure it's like this stained glass window design. And I was like, we could do something a bit cooler. So I said, let's make it three-dimensional, like a real stained glass window. So I designed the moulding to be three-dimensional. And then I also designed the vinyl, but also the leading to be laser cut and overlaid on the vinyl, so it gave that real three-dimensional look. So those are the windows. And I didn't know what I was doing, literally. There were so many paths and anchor points, and if I moved something, then something else would like throw out, but it worked. And so that's what I loved about it, is that three-dimensional aspect. And I also did a bit of a texture look and gradient on those coloured panels to make them look really realistic. And I love this diagram. I don't know if you guys relate to this, but when I first saw this, I was like, oh my God, other people have to eat a shit sandwich too. I'm not the only one. And this is basically what it is. You jump in, you're excited about the project, you make a promise, and then you have to deliver on this promise. And it goes through this self-doubt, it goes through this, overwhelming doubt when you've, spent hours on this project and you've literally come up with nothing, and you pretty much have an existential crisis in that stage. But it gives you faith that you'll always come through. And this quote by Marie Forleo sums it up. Everything is figure-outable. So you've got to just trust that you'll work it out in time. And I really appreciate creatives for this, because we all have to go through this pain and we all have to eat this shit sandwich. Here's a few more examples of my work, and in every case, I just try to over-deliver as much as I can to build up my portfolio. So, as much as so I've just got, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, I've just tried to over-deliver as much as I can because it's only extra work and extra skill building for you, and then the client gets it, and if your work is remarkable, then people will share it. People will talk about it. And so that's always been my idea, is to go that extra mile. And through my work at Blanco, I was really passionate about helping entrepreneurs and helping people bring their vision to life. And I've always had this soft spot for entrepreneurs because I know what it's like. I know how hard it is to wear all of those hats and the learning curves, and you know, it's a really difficult thing, but a really rewarding thing if you want to jump on the roller coaster. So I became the ambassador for the League of Extraordinary Women, and I actually did their rebrand as well. And at these events, I was the ambassador for about a year and a half, and I'd have a different speaker every 6 weeks or so. And one of these times, I decided to have an acquaintance who was a clinical psychologist talk about mental health for entrepreneurs. And she came on stage and she started talking about mental health. She started talking about personal development. She started talking about the brain and neuroplasticity. And I forgot that I had forgotten my love for the brain. And it really sparked something inside of me, really exciting. And another thing that she talked about was this moment of choice. So she had a V up on the screen, and she said, in every moment of choice, you have the choice. You can either choose comfort or you can choose courage. And when you choose comfort, you are just feeding those default habit loops, everything that you've always done, and staying small within your comfort zone. But when you choose courage, you choose to take those small steps outside your comfort zone that will build your confidence. And you can start to grow. That's where the transformation happens. And I was like, yeah, that's super interesting. And it planted a little seed in my mind. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but you know those times where you're in the shower or you're going for a walk and an idea just hits you and it smacks you in the face? And I was in this high-intensity interval training class, and I was working out and I was doing my squats, and then the idea just hit me, and I thought, I want to create an online course with her. And so, you know the story about Steve Jobs and all the dots, you can't join the dots looking back. All of those dots started coalescing, and I was like, wow, it's like the brain and my experience with online courses and my experience in branding and marketing and psychology, and everything started to come together, and I started getting really excited. And I thought, I'm going to ask her. And I was really nervous, and I asked her for a cup of tea, and I said sheepishly, do you want to create an online course with me? And she was like, yes. And so it started. And that was about a year and a half ago now. So we've created the online course, The V Effect. We're just going through our beta testing at the moment, and we're going to launch soon. And it's basically combining leading neuroscience research, leading psychology frameworks, all together to create a course that helps people step outside their comfort zone. And we believe that your life is shaped in millions of moments of choice, and it is in those tiny moments of courage and those tiny moments of daily choices, daily habits, that your life trajectory is shaped. So we've created the V Effect. This is our online platform, and we've divided it into inner work, learning about the brain, and then creating habits to support your growth. And so we've got our students going through there, and it's really exciting to see their feedback and the changes that they're making in their life. And here is the V. So you've got your comfort zone and you've got your limitless life. And another thing that we really try to instill when people do their inner work is to create their own version of success. And so a lot of people look to other people or hear other people or compare themselves on social media and compare themselves to everyone else's version of success. media's telling you need to be a millionaire or you need to be that. But we want people to really look in and say, what is my authentic version of success? And part of that is elucidating your values. And that's basically what's most important to you. So we've created a free online values assessment where you can jump in and you can get your top 10 values. It's at theveffect.com if you want to jump in and do your assessment, and you'll get your top 10 values of what's most important to you, and so you can start taking those courageous steps towards a life that's authentically meaningful to you. All right, so we're at the end, but before I finish, I want to take us back to the year 1900. There's another exciting fact about the year 1900, and that is the lifespan. So does anyone know what the average lifespan in the year 1900 was? 55? Sorry? It was actually my age today, 31 years old. And so let that sink in. Yeah, we're actually standing on the shoulders of giants because of the creativity and innovation of all of these people that have come before you. You have a long and rich lifespan to explore your purpose. And you also have the internet, and you have YouTube, and you've got books, and you've got all of this knowledge. You can literally learn anything at your fingertips. You just have to be proactive about it. And also, with social media, you can bring your product out in the open easier than ever before. And it is the first time in history that entrepreneurship is actually a viable career. So it's exciting times, and it's exciting to talk to you guys, and you're developing those skills, those creative skills that we need for the future. So basically, I just want to say, do you want to choose comfort or do you want to choose courage? The choice is yours. Thank you.